Welcome back to the skating session. My name is Tony Wheeler,
My name's Thomas Vu.
and we are here to cover day two of the World Team Trophy. It features the pair short program, free dance, and the men's free skate. I want to start with the pair short program, but I want to include a little note before we start about the pairs. One of the judges on this panel, he's actually on the panel for the men, the women, and the pairs. I just didn't realize it on the
Oh,
first day. His name is Walter Toigo from Italy. I actually, in 2011, received some footage of him copying off of another judge, an American judge, who actually happens to be at this event as well. And throughout an entire event, he was copying off the judge right next to him. Every single score, the judge would put input, and then he would input a few seconds later. Anyways, all of it was captured on someone's phone. They posted it on YouTube. They shared it with me. I sent it to the ISU, and I was basically pressing them, asking what they were going to do with it. Anyways, long story short, he received, I believe, a 2-year suspension. Uh,
oh,
and then when I was talking to some of the connections I have within the judging community, I was told when he came back, they didn't really test his competence in the sport, whether he knew the rules or not. And they basically just reassigned him. I don't know how much that is true, but I heard that there was no real process to make sure that the judge got the training and the certifications that they needed. So I just thought that was interesting. It was a long time ago. I don't think there was anything malicious by him doing that. I just think he didn't know how to do his job. And I
right.
worry when you see this is one of Italy's judges that is often in really big events. He's been at Worlds in the last few years as well. Just found it very interesting.
Yeah, that is one way to stay within the corridor. So I can see why someone would do that, right? And you can always just be like, well, this person, right? Yeah.
It's
Interesting.
interesting too that the other judge that was involved in things, Wendy Ensbin, she's also been around forever, but there was only one seat in between her and him in the pairs short program yesterday, and I was wondering, maybe the ISU intentionally did not put them together. I know it's just like a random draw, but it would have been very suspicious if they would have been together. Anyways, all right, let's move on to the actual skating.
Oh, that's right. That's
Efimova
actual
and
skating.
Mitrofanov started the event for the United States. I feel like they're looking better and better with each event as far as their two shell skate as one, if you will.
Yep.
I feel like they're starting to be more comfortable with each other. I think in the beginning of the year and even last year, we saw this maybe shut off kind of personalities that didn't really mesh together. They were skating together, but not really at all. They were kind of doing their own thing and not really showing a lot of emotion. I feel like whatever clicked, maybe their good results that started the year, and then at nationals, I've really felt the breakthrough. I think the
Yeah.
world is really great for them, and this short program here, I felt the same. I think they're really delivering very good performance, and they're upping their ability to emote, which he was never known for. She really was never known for with her previous partners. So it's nice to see that they've come together and they've elevated it to the next level. She had trouble with her side by side triple toe. She stepped out. I think the steps at the end look really tight, but as we go on throughout the day, this is going to be a common that
Yeah,
everybody's
it's a theme. It's the
really
theme.
tired.
They started it off and it ended that way today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, especially about them coming alive together, especially within the past year. Because I still remember Mitrofanov with his previous partner, how they would just give nothing. They were really technically good. That it was competent, but in terms of that other part, the choreography performance just was never there. Whereas now it is. But I felt the same thing. Tired, especially at the end. You could see that in the step sequence. I saw in the lift too. Just even like the transitions into the positions just felt like everything took a little longer. At the end too, they got a little lazy with their lines, and it could just be I was the first time I had noticed it, but in the side by side, when they're in the upright position, their leg lines aren't matching, and I'm like, ooh, that
Oh,
kind
and
of
they
drove
were
me
also
nuts.
slightly like maybe an eighth of a turn off, which whatever. They were really close together on the
Yeah.
side by side turn.
Otherwise, good.
This
Yeah.
one, but it was the unison was just slightly off. Just a little thing they can continue to work on. But I really like that somersault dynamic ending where he just flips her into the position and they hit it really quick.
Mhm.
I think like I said this at Worlds. I think that this program actually is their stronger program of the two. I know a lot of people rave about their free skate, but I like this one actually a lot. I'm happy how they're progressing. Obviously, it's not the skate they wanted, but I think realistically, even if they were clean, how much higher were they going to get in this
Right.
competition? So still good for them.
Right. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see where the side by sides are, the early part of next season, because that's what they really need to like set themselves apart. But they have everything. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Ooh.
Next, the Kovalevs from France. I don't know.
Ooh.
They were so unlucky. I even said at Worlds during practices, I don't know if you were sitting next to me or if other people were, but I said I think they're going to be one of the teams, unfortunately, that does not qualify.
Yeah.
Just because I was watching their practice and I was like, no, I don't think so. They just were not looking good. I feel like it's been a few seasons of this, honestly. I think a few years ago they really started to hit their stride. They were doing clean short programs, they were doing decent free skates, and then I feel like in the last few years it's just been at first odd programs, just the programs I feel like don't really connect to. Um, the music is fun. They actually go into Toxic, the original Toxic by Britney Spears, pretty quickly, so that's a positive, but they give the program absolutely nothing.
Great.
There's not even there's no choreo. There's truly it's just element to element until you get to element number six, the step sequence. There's literally they just go through the motions of getting through these elements. And actually, and I don't remember if you were with me or not. It was either the women's free skate or the men's free skate. One of them at Worlds. We were trying to get to our seats and running up the escalator, and the French like team members, the officials, I guess you could say, were really intently talking to them at this table right outside the
Yeah, yeah, yes. Yeah, I remember
yeah,
that.
and it
Yep.
was just like they were really intense, and it was just after they hadn't qualified, but it was whatever the conversation was, it was out in the open, and it was really intense. So I was like, yikes! Like you almost didn't want to look, and you just keep going up the escalator and don't pay attention because it was out there for everybody to see, but it didn't look like it was a very cheery conversation.
It's one of
So
three spot they're fighting for one of three spots available at the
yeah,
qualifier, right? Yeah.
yeah. Well, they'll make it as
The
a
team.
wild card team for
Yeah.
sure, but I don't for the individual event. I don't think so. It's just
Yeah, and
I,
you can see that here. It's like definitely plateaued, but 2 years ago, and they've never skated better than they did 2 years ago. If anything, it feels like a downward trajectory. And everything here, it felt like they just got these programs. It's the earliest part of the season. They just got back from a long break and with the summer where they weren't training as intensely. That's what this skate felt like. It was, yeah, I wrote I needed more toxicity in this toxic, like because there was none. There was
it,
like nothing
it
in
it
it.
ends up like okay, like you get to the step sequence and there's hints of it being fun. I just don't really for being a married couple. I just don't see like this. They really skate on their own terms the entire time, and it's not. They don't even pay attention to each other at all. So.
I know, right? Yeah, definitely two single skaters. They're not skating inwardly or outwardly. And then a really quick question too. For that, I'm looking at the protocol and I saw that they did their side by side as double toe, but I know she opened up. But I saw like over 2.25 rotations. I don't know
So you
how you
thought you were
saw it.
gonna
It
triple
needed to be
toe
triple toe, double carrot.
downgraded? Yeah.
Yeah, downgrade. It was a strange call, unless I didn't see the replay for it, because I don't think I watched the replay for it. But live, it seemed
I
like
thought
over
she
two and a
actually
quarter
I
at
thought she
least.
did like a double that was really popped. Like I don't think she was
Yeah.
full
Oh,
or
okay.
anything. I don't remember, but there was in the men's event, there was also a situation where I think they could have made a different call than they did. So it's possible that
Okay.
they
It wouldn't have made any
but I thought it was
difference
a
because
double. Yeah.
competition like this, but it was just strange to see that anyway. Yeah.
So they finished with in sixth place, so they get their 7 points. Medokina and Burilava from Georgia. So actually at Worlds, I thought this is how much I wasn't really paying attention to them as someone that claims that they memorize all these programs. That apparently was their short program last year that they brought back this year.
Oh, really?
I don't remember. I don't remember it. I don't
I
mind
don't
it,
either.
but again, as we talked about in Worlds, I think the program they had, the Papadakis Cicerone mini tribute program, was perfectly fine, if not better. So I'm
Yeah.
curious why they made the switch between Junior Worlds and Worlds because the turnaround time there was like 2 weeks, not even. So I don't know. Talk about such clean perfection on the jumping elements, though. They're so in time with each other. The twist is huge. The throw has
Yeah.
distance, has extension. The side by sides are really close together, which let's be real, most of the top teams are miles and miles apart. So a team like this, it really stands out when they do the jumps as close together as they do. I thought actually the death spiral didn't look horrendous today. which is a step up for them because I'm the
It is
one
better.
saying, I don't even know if this should get any credit at all. But one thing I will say is they end on that death spiral, which is a little bit awkward just because of the position they hit, and then right before that, they do a step sequence where it's a lot of dance holds, and I respect that they're trying to do something a little bit more difficult, but the speed just kind of gets killed, and it looks a little bit clunky, especially when you start off with all those perfection in the
Mhm.
jumping elements. Otherwise, though, I mean, this team's going to score massively time and time again in the short programs if they do this.
And I think their PCS is on an upward trajectory for sure, considering their consistency. But I also think it's improvement because what I saw here was that they were really focused on that performance. And I still thought it was a new short program from Worlds
I
too.
did too.
And I wrote in notes here, it's like, oh wow, because I felt like I enjoyed this short program, whereas at Worlds I didn't really get into the short program, great elements. But here it felt like I was entertained, I was with it, and I wrote that like, oh, I hope they keep it for the Olympic season, or it feels like they're going to do
No,
that. It's a new
I
program,
don't
but it's
know.
not.
mean, yeah.
But yeah, the same thing. I don't like that they end on their weakest element. I really don't get that. But so one thing I wrote here too, though, is the way they're performing. They have probably the best side-by-side jumps in terms of like quality. Their twist is one of the best. There's spoilers for that bronze medal. Like I still feel like gold, silver, depending on who ends up in the, you know, Olympic, whatever they were calling the athletes that are Russian but not actually representing Russia next year. To me, it's just gold and silver are locked up, right? And it's really that bronze medal, and I feel like the Italians are the favorite. But just watching this, they could play spoiler, or if anything, early season come out and then be that favorite from the get-go.
They're so technically strong, especially
Yeah,
the short programs usually go really well for them. So I think that's what's we see that their score is going up and up and up and up. And I feel like any of these other teams fighting for the bronze medal, maybe not as consistent if they make a little mistake in the short. I don't know based on how they get scored in the free skate, even though I personally think the free skate is very weak this year. They still are scoring massively on PCS. So I think next year get a better program and yeah, they might even be clear favorites for the bronze medal by the
yeah.
time the Olympics come around.
I mean, like I can see Olympics, they're getting high eights or low nines from judges. Yeah,
Delano Deschamps. I also don't remember if I said this during Worlds, but I talked to her in Boitano's lounge on
you
the
did, I
last night of the
think. Yeah.
competition, and she had, I don't know if they were invited to the gala or not, and they ended up not taking the invitation. But she said there was something going on with his hand or his finger, and they were
Yeah.
just resting it to make sure that they were ready for World Team Trophy. I don't think it was a messy skate today. I don't think that had anything to do with it.
No, I think they took a break after Worlds. If he was injured, that's what I put in my notes. It's like it
Yeah.
looked like they took that break. They needed to rest his hand to give it that. They came back here, for the competition, the prize money, the trip to Japan, all that, and that's what it looked like because it looked like they really hadn't done any run throughs really until they got here. Which who's blaming them at this point? Nobody. Um,
No, I mean none of the skaters. Let's be real.
yeah. Yeah, none of them. Yeah, because this was not their usual sharpness. Usually they're really quick, they're really sharp, and this just didn't feel like that at all, right? You could feel the fatigue in this skate.
And I think the judges did as well because you look at their PCS and I mean they're a world champion team and they're
Uh,
just above an eight. So yeah, I think all year I love Deanna Stellato and I love them as a team, but I really think they needed to ditch this program very early in the
yeah,
season. I don't think
I
either
agree.
program was
Yep.
really getting the PCS, and I think next year
It's
if this happens early on in the fall, then they really need to evaluate and go
and I think
back. What can we do?
I think here's the problem. Like I just think as a concept, Beyonce feels old now. And I say this as a tired millennial who at every wedding, everyone's like crazy in love, let's go out and dance, like all that. It's become a thing for our generation, I feel like. But in skating, I feel like it's become this really lost thing. You're losing that classical, skating what we think of now in the 90s. That feels like what we think of as classical skating. We feel nostalgic for it. And modern skating, we feel like really is more like modern esoteric music. And this just kind of feels like that in between that's none of it, right? It's not modern, it's not classic. It just feels old. And yeah, I agree with you. This program should have been changed very quickly. Because that's what I get. I get like very tired. My back starts hurting when I hear this music. I don't. It really connects to that sense of me that feels like I'm aging. Yep.
Their twist is amazing. I
Yeah,
will say that. Like
it
it's
is.
huge. It's she does this
It's
little
so improved. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
She's like a swish on the landing. Like it's very done so easily. But as a whole, yeah, I think it was hard to reach that kind of success that they had with the
Hmm.
program the year before because that short program I love it. Actually, both their programs. So, like I said, at Worlds, they've had their programs for the next few seasons already planned out way ahead in advance, and I hope that it's something that we love. We'll see next year.
Yeah. And then I know like we had talked about like, do we keep or get rid of the Death Spiral in pairs? And this is a pair to where I'm like, they
Oh
can
yeah,
get rid
that
of it.
too. Yeah.
I I I really hate how she chooses to point her toe up. It just I don't know.
I
Aesthetically,
don't
I'm
mind it,
like, I
honestly.
prefer the
I know
classic
it
out to the
bothers.
side. It's yeah.
It bothers a lot of people. For me, it's not. I thought it worked with their free skate last year, and then we're seeing it kind of the same variation or very similar all over the place with them. And I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of maybe just not doing a Death Spiral at all, and just doing it as like a
I
choreographed.
know. Because there's like four teams whose Death Spirals you want to watch, and
Yeah,
that's like
exactly.
end of list today. Yeah.
Miura Kihara from Japan won Worlds, obviously.
Yeah.
Love the program. I think they looked extremely tired, at least from me. One thing I didn't mention is when I went to Skate America, everyone says, "Oh, everyone looks different in person. You're going to have such different impressions of all these skaters." For the most part, no. Like 99% of the way through, no.
I
But
don't think that's true.
he,
Okay.
he actually has a really, really big presence that I don't think really
Hmm.
comes across on TV. He commands the ice, and it's almost like you want to watch what he's doing, and he's a really good partner. I felt that at Skate America, and I also felt that at Worlds.
Interesting.
Yeah, I
I've
didn't.
never felt like he doesn't have a presence. When I watch them, I always feel like they're a team. I always feel that kind of like, I think that's what one of their big strengths is that partnering where they skate as equals. So I never felt that, but I guess other people do.
Yeah, interesting for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just blown away by the command he has. Um, Side by side jumps are a mile apart. Like the camera has to zoom out as far as they
I
can.
know.
And I think that Chris said something like he was maybe surprised by it or whatever he said. I don't remember, but it's not anything new. These jumps are
Yeah.
all like this.
And honestly, like it's one of these things to where to me, I don't know how they ever get away with not getting a review on their side by side. I review it every
Yeah,
single
she's always
time
tight.
because
She's always tight.
yeah, and they often just get the benefit of the doubt. And I'm really curious to see now that there's so much more competition in pairs, which is really exciting. Like I never thought I'd be this excited for pairs coming into an Olympic season. I wonder if they'll keep getting that benefit of the doubt next year, or how the panels start calling everybody. Does it become more of an equalizer and kind of see who emerges? Yeah. Anyway.
Really good side by side spins. And one thing I did notice too, I think they did look tired. I don't think they were as sharp, especially in the step sequence, which I love. There's some really, really staccato, sharp moments that are exactly to the music, and I feel like they were ahead of the music slightly
Oh,
throughout the.
really? Okay.
Yeah, I love this program. I think it's miles and miles and miles away the best thing they've ever done, but it just kind of fell flat for me today. I mean, obviously
Ah,
they skated it
interesting.
well, just I
They
don't
yeah, they
feel.
skated it well. I always kind of feel like they like that though. They're always skating with this kind of like abandon and
No,
that
always
and
that. I
that
mean,
fatigue, tired, where it's like we're not finishing things right because we don't have that energy. But they're never doing that. But I
I don't know.
have a
I just
question.
they didn't look
Okay?
sharp. Tom, ask me.
Do you know if they're working on a quad twist? Because that height is, I feel like getting better and better every season, and it
Has
seems for
Bruno
here
ever
with the
had a twin?
triple, I don't know, but like the rotation speed too, it felt like they were trying to control the rotation to keep it a triple in this. It felt very deliberate, and I was just curious because going into this, I wonder if they're thinking we need an edge like Sway and Han had that quad twist
Right.
gave them that edge, which allowed her to have that mistake on the side by side sock house. So like
I'll
interesting,
send some
wondering.
DMs and I'll
Yeah, yeah, I want to know. Ooh.
I would be surprised. I don't remember Bruno's camp ever having a
Yeah.
quad twist. You know, Megan was doing throw quad of everything, and I don't know. I'll ask. I'll find
And
out.
if she has any say, she's pushing for it.
Oh
Something
yeah,
like
of
that.
course.
Because she understands that it will give them that advantage. It's how she was able to like stay ahead of oh my goodness, how can I forget her
Ross of
name?
Warzone.
Stolpova. Oh no, I was thinking of Stolbova and Klimov.
Conti and Mazzi finished the day for Italy. Your favorites, just go ahead
Yeah,
and go.
but
Let them
tired.
know.
I'll talk about it. But this is another skate. Felt tired. They took a vacation after Worlds, some short trip, which they totally deserved. Um, but I really enjoy them. But it's the same thing. It was like a clean skate, but their score was right for it because everything was just that minus one or two less GOE than from their normal. Um, but one thing that makes them do stand out to me is just the way they do their twist. They choose not to be horizontal. They choose to do the more classic, almost like how we used to see it before the Chinese pairs more or less kind of made that the norm. Which I actually really liked. It was really interesting to see because at first, you're like, oh, this feels strange. But then it's like, oh, I enjoy the difference, how clean it is, how set down is. And though I feel like in the judges' eyes, it kind of maxes out their GOE at a +3 for the twist, but I don't know. But that's really the only thing that really stood out because otherwise it felt like we just learned this program skate.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's a million music changes, which I don't mind, but the thing is
Oh, I like it, but
that the tempo changes so often that they weren't really keeping up with it at
yeah,
all. It's
fair.
so if they're not completely conditioned, I feel like it's this franticness trying to keep up, and I felt that.
And I'm really glad, like as a whole, the pairs. I know it was only 6 pairs, but I really enjoyed it. Like as a competition, probably of the day, it was my favorite. But
Me too.
yeah, we'll talk
Yeah.
more about it. But
So let's move on to the free dance.
yeah.
So I don't think we dropped this little tidbit at Worlds, but or even yesterday. Maybe I did, but then I cut it out or something. But the interesting thing for me about World Team Trophy is we see these levels that are usually elevated compared to what teams have been getting all year. Line steps are level 3, for example. We see a lot of level 2, even level 1s from the top teams sometimes throughout the year. We talked to a very, very high-ranking technical controller at Worlds, and the conversation basically was, well, if the entire competition long, we're watching and watching and watching and giving these low levels. When we start to get to the final teams, we start to look for just even that slight hint of an edge or something that can boost up their level. And if we find even the littlest thing, we'll probably be prone to giving them a higher level. And I feel like this competition just was that from the beginning. So it was really shocking to hear that from somebody at Worlds just so openly, but I felt like it's like everybody gets a level 3, everybody gets a higher level.
Yeah, I was
Um,
to say like the 1 foot step calls our levels at this
all
competition
level
weren't
3.
real. They were not real at this competition because everybody's giving you basic level or level 1 in this competition. That was not great in terms of the free dance
So they
overall.
saw just a little hint of a
Yeah,
deep,
yeah, yeah,
and then it wobbled to the
a
other
little
end.
bit.
They still get credit for
Hmm.
it. So yeah,
And that was really interesting. Just to quickly expand upon that too, even just understanding that philosophy and when they're explaining it, how like you have 3 different people who have ultimately 3 different standards. You're all interpreting the same set of rules, but because everyone's an individual and has their own experiences, they have that, right? And the reason we see these different standards from panel to panel is because that's just the inherent nature of human interaction. You have 3 people who come together to form a standard together. It's going to be different because you always have a different group of 3 people. And, explained that way, a lot of it does make sense, right? And so when it comes to the different levels of calling from competition, I don't have an issue with that. The biggest thing is when it's within a competition. But, so I don't think we should ever get focused on the fact that like the general calling XYZ was this, right? I think we should just focus on given the standard of calling in this competition were these calls fair?
wow.
And that's how I'm trying to like think about things from now on, even just for my own sanity.
Yeah, it's just really interesting to hear somebody so established say,
Yeah,
well, for the first few groups, we're very strict. But then
that
if we
too.
realize we're being too strict, we have to be nicer. And it's like, all right, but the groups are based on world standing. So what you're doing is these newer teams or these inexperienced teams are getting hit with all these really low levels. But then when you get to the mid level and the high level teams, you're like, who cares? We
It's
have to be nicer. So
it's like that concept that everyone's first kid is their practice kid,
yeah.
and I was a practice kid. So it's clear that, it is like that a little bit too in this sport, especially like in ice dance, where they're trying to figure out a standard together and it doesn't come about until later, and then it ends up being, like you're saying, an easier one than when they started with,
All right,
oftentimes.
let's talk
Anyway,
about competition and maybe we can
uh,
drop some other
yeah.
gossip.
Okay, so talking about Yoshida Marita, like I really like this a lot, and I wrote here. I wish we got to see them at this program at Worlds. I love that they went Prokofiev, Romeo and Juliet, and speaking about like classic versus kind of like old, right feeling. This is just classic ice dance. It gave me that nostalgic feeling of watching Anastasia and Pezorat, and one thing about them, they don't struggle with the in-betweens. Their transitions are really good. Their skating skills are really good. It's the elements where they're struggling, and you could see that here a lot. Like they were just unsteady getting into them. Often the transitions are like holds and all that throughout all the elements, and their steps weren't the cleanest. There was this kind of like pause, start, one waiting for the other quality happening a lot. But all that can be cleaned up. All that's time, but the base is just there. And I love the choreo step. They really sold it. And I thought their GOE for the choreo step was too low. I don't understand that. I'm like, give them +3. If they're a top team, they're getting +4 for that, just given the personality. But then like speaking of which, how like they're a team that always tries to skate above their level, and they were doing that until the choreographic slide where they just lose balance a little bit, and then it's a double fall. So that was, ooh.
I feel like they're always the thing that I like about them, and I think that what is going to really help them is they do have this almost abandonment. It's we see it with the Paris team from Japan too.
Yeah.
The energy at some point is going to have to be honed in, and I'm sure Kathy Reed is going to be all over this to fix it. But everything is like almost borderline a disaster, but it makes it like more exciting. I think
Yeah. It's almost like akin to the Young Goose Academy teams. They're just always
yeah,
going
exactly.
for full speed, and that's the style. But this team is cleaner than them. This
Mhm.
team has better extension, better skating skills, just that better base, better posture, like everything. So I'm just really excited by like, yeah, I really want to see them do well. So
Sure.
Davis and Smolkin, okay, so like I've been really down on them, but at Worlds and here, you could see such big improvement. And it was harder for me to actually see it live at Worlds, given just seeing everybody, right? But in a smaller competition like this, you could just see it so clearly. I don't want to say they deserve 118. I don't think so. But should they be in the 110s? For sure. And I think that's something that the fandom probably needs to get behind more, just for their own levels of sanity. But I really liked how smooth everything was. You could see that going from element to element. The transitions are better. Nothing feels like it's just stop, start. Like all their skating used to be stop, start, stop, start. Like their Igor skating was very here's a moment, but nothing in between. I don't know what they were doing in Weta. There was no strategy. But here you could really see that. And I still have the same criticism from the rhythm dance. They have no identity. The program's just generic and meh. It doesn't work for them. And I really think that really dramatic style, like something like a Moulin Rouge, is their style. And then maybe we have to find a way like Virtue and Noir, because that felt like more their style too to me, to mesh it with their camp, right? With Montreal. But
I like the first minute or so. I think the rotational lift that they do in the beginning,
it's great.
it's sets the standard for the program. And then when the music change comes in, I kind of get uninvested. But I think that they have a really interesting pattern going into their Twizzles. But then what I noticed with the Twizzles is they do that first set, and then they really take advantage of this break
The
in
5 steps
between
I
to
know you
come
could
through.
take.
It's pretty long. It doesn't bother me. I just really noticed it was kind of glaring. And then I don't know. I think that I agree. They don't really have that identity yet. I'm sure that I am gave them probably whatever. I don't know. I don't think that maybe they were the most involved in their programs this year. They were probably handed something because of
Yeah,
the coaching change that they
definitely.
maybe next year they'll have more say. I feel like I've always defended that they're a better team than most people want to
Yeah.
give credit for, and most people don't really understand the fine details of what goes into these scores, and they're just basing their opinion on the relationship that she has. But I do feel like this score was probably a little bit over the top, especially compared to the next team.
Yeah.
But they're yeah, I think a lot of people expected them 3 or 4 years ago to be pushing all the way up to the top of the standings, and they've really, if you think about it, where they were in 2022 to now, with the Russians not being in the competition, they really haven't progressed. They haven't really moved up ahead of a lot of these teams. They've kind of stayed static, and I think being 10th at Worlds was even a surprise. I thought, they'd be 12 or 13.
Yeah.
So we'll see about next year, but I do hope that they have programs that fit them more. I think that these ones are kind of just there, and that's it. Except for the first minute. I really like the first minute. Even if it's Bond, it's a throwback to 2002 when everyone was using that. But that's the part I like. And then, like I
I
said,
know.
it kind of just it loses it for me.
It's that nostalgia, no, 100%. I wrote that. I'm like, oh, this is Bond. This feels so old. Like, my God. Like, yeah. When was the last time someone skated to Bond?
Quite a while, probably. I'm sure there's some junior skaters somewhere that their coach is like, "Oh, this was really good in the when I was skating." But as far as the top team, I don't remember actually. L'Opereva and Brissot, this
Yeah.
one's probably going to take a while because I just do not understand what is happening with them. I will say though, they did not look sharp, but this
Yeah.
is consistent throughout the whole competition. This was
Right.
not,
It's not
I'm
just
not
them.
going to sit and say, "Oh, it should have been 122 whatever points." Um, it was sloppy, but I think that this program, if you're looking at composition and you're looking at the performance, it still should be very high. And their skating skills are very good too.
Right.
Um, I feel like they really I hate to get in my head about what the politics are of ice dance and what's going on behind the scenes and what deals might or might not being made, but I do feel like the minute the other team, Fournier Baudry and Cizeron, announced that they are now a team, and then we have the French Federation saying that they're their only big hope or whatever the words were. I feel like this team, the judges have found a way to kind of chip away at their GOE that they should be getting, and everything's a little
Mhm.
bit poor. And um,
Right. Even if it's not like intentional, there's this the natural psychology to it. We have all these biases in our brains, and there's a lot of debate over, you should be able to be completely objective, but that's never true, right? And so even if there is nothing nefarious going on, the announcements themselves, the very idea that this is an Olympic champion coming back, the Federation getting behind their Olympic champion, that does everything in your brain to be like, this is the number two team. They need number two scores. It's not like the US where they were always just letting Chalk and Bates and Hubble and Donahue battle it out there in international competition, not putting their fingers on the scale, even at one point, putting them both in the same skate America, just letting them figure it out there.
yeah.
But like, and that's not happening here, right? And so you can feel that, and you can see that, like, and you can see it in just even some of the PCS. You can see it in the GOE for these elements. Like, it's again threes, mostly threes. Getting to four is now becoming really hard for this team, and I think that's really all it is. It's that psychology of the fact that they're now the number two team.
One thing I noticed, I don't know if you picked up on it, but I didn't want to tell you ahead of time because I was really curious if you saw in the Kiss and Cry,
Oh no, I
Roman
did not.
looked like he was
Oh
not
yes,
for this at
yes.
all.
The score, yeah.
He looked over to the French team leader Fabrice Blondel, and he kind of just like nodded like acceptingly over this. Jeffrey, on the other hand, was very surprised. His mouth was wide open, and he couldn't figure out what was going on. But Roman just very curiously, he just gave like this nod of like, "Yep."
I mean, honestly,
So
if you're confused, you're naive. I'm not trying to be like, critical, but I don't understand how there's a confusion. It all makes a lot of sense. There's past history to this and the way things were done by from the French Fed side, and then, Cicerone announcing before Worlds. All that's intentional. Those were all choices made. So yeah. And I'm just looking at the protocol now, and I can see that where, like the midline, you see a lot of Jeffs getting +2. Whereas maybe if that didn't happen, it'd be a +3. And you could see that that's slow, that's maybe losing half a GOE, losing one GOE here and there, losing a quarter or half a point in PCS in some of these categories, all adds up to like 4 or 5-ish points that
right.
otherwise they would have gotten. Yeah.
So, speaking about I'll put them together at Skate America, but do you think that the French Grand Prix, you think that the French Federation
I hope they
will
do. No, they
find
should. They
yes?
should. That'd be smart, actually. I think, I mean, they don't have to pull to support two teams like this, so put them in there, let the international judges decide, and I say get behind the team that the international judges, pick, basically. And it's almost very similar to when Virtue and Moira came back, right? That first fall they met Papadakis and Cicerone. Was it in Tokyo? Was it or NHK?
Yeah.
Right? And then the PCS was just like this all throughout, and it was that TES. But then after that competition, the PCS started pulling away from the teams, right? And V&M dominated that season in PCS right after that. And so I think it's really important to establish that at the beginning for one of the teams, whichever one comes out on top.
Yeah, I think I don't know that the French Fed will do it because we even saw at the beginning of this year they pushed for one team, I think, at the French Masters or an early season competition, and then the international judges were like absolutely not, and they dumped that team even below one of their other younger up and coming teams. So we'll see. I don't know that. I think that it will be good publicity for
Yeah.
Rowan if he is competing directly against his top competition, but I don't know that it will happen. Quignon and Fabry,
Yeah, I wrote the first word, sigh.
uh, I think actually I only put Psy and then I wrote some notes afterwards, but yeah, I don't think he's injured. I don't think it's that. I think maybe this is a Twizzles problem, both segments of this competition. We saw it earlier in the
All
year.
season. Yeah.
Yeah, so balance checks twice. He really kind of stepped out of the third Twizzle. He hit it, but he was way off balance, like he was going to fall backwards. There's so much complexity, and I think that it gets. I think that so many people that like ice dancing really just go by the vibe of the program, whether they like the music and the theme or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't like this theme, but I can respect that the complexity is above and
Mhm.
beyond what anyone else is doing in the top level. Into and out of the elements and the way they curve and the way they change their edges and the little nuances into the lift and just they're always doing something that's unpredictable and it should ideally kind of add to that GOE, but the when you look at the timing of the elements, I think this is the issue. The music is really kind of monotone or not going anywhere, or
Mhm.
they do a stationary lift at the end, and it's really it should be creative because it is, but it's so clunky and it's at like a music change, and it's just this is another like mentality of the judges. I feel like if it's not standing out with the music, then there's another reason to give it, okay, +2 or +3. We're not going any higher than that. When really a lot of their elements are super, super top level. Just I'm just I try so much to get into this program because I really love them, but
It's
it's not
because
that.
it's not, it's, I wrote here, it's just that whole concept of dolls come to life, but it's robots. They didn't do anything different. Instead of this like doll choreography, they're doing robot choreography. Oh, right. But there's no story. I don't get into it for very similar reasons. They're, they're better than this program. They're so much better than this program. And uh, it was just skated better than at Worlds, right? I thought it was. Aside from that like Twizzle mistake, this was skated better. It was skated cleaner. Yeah, it scores really low. Like
Right.
122, and you could see that too, on their faces when the score came up. They could feel something from that because that's
It's
that's a
10
crazy
points
low
lower
score.
than two other teams, and then
Yeah.
you consider Fear and Gibson, you consider the new French team, you consider that Ferrer, I mean, there were so many teams that were right in line, right below them at Worlds. You have to think, well, even if we're skating semi-decently and we're pulling scores that are 10 points below our main competition for the last 2 years, I don't know. I'm another one. We talked about this, like these skaters that stay with their coaches forever. If I'm seeing at the beginning of the season that my program is not being well received, maybe if my PCS is dipping down, like we saw with some other teams, um, if I'm consistently not scoring what I've scored the last few years, then I would be like, okay, I need to make a change. And I don't know why they held on to this program. Obviously, you want to make your creation work, but it's not working, and they're not the only ones. I feel like this season in
Yeah.
Iceland is just very boring for the top teams. But when you're falling that much behind in the pre-Olympic season, I don't understand why you wouldn't say, okay, we gotta get things on track again before it's too late to make this comeback.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on all of that. Like, and I'm trying to think of like next year. I really hope they don't try to go outside the box. I really hope they kind of go back through their whole catalog of programs and think to themselves, "What's a concept that worked for us? Let's do something similar." I don't want to see them do something new because I want them to do well. I want to see them fight for that bronze medal because right now, everything's telling us that they're going to be that fourth, fifth, sixth team at the Olympics, and I'd love to see them get that bronze. I'm trying to think too what programs they could do, and I'm just like, give them some type of movie soundtrack to some Euro movie, right? to where it's not as bombastic as like some big picture American movie, but it's emotional, it's subtle, it's still in your face in a way because they need that. I think they need the to ride music. I don't think they can fill the void left by music.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. Gillis and Poirier,
Oh, I loved it.
they, eh, it's another program I never really got into, and I said this at Worlds. I just hold them to a higher standard because there have been several programs that are just masterpieces that they've done. Um, One thing I will say, they are one of the only teams I think, at least at the senior level this season, that opts to do their 1 foot sequence in a different order. So they're doing different things at the same time, and
Yeah, they're not mirroring. They're kind of doing like
no,
the opposite in a way where it's like
it's
I'm doing a forward back out and he's doing um a sub backwards back out. Yeah. Sorry. Blah.
but the thing is, by doing that, it just looks like they're both losing their balance and trying to catch up with each other. I think it's another thing of being tired. And they really, I don't know, the energy was down, especially compared to their rhythm dance. I thought like they blew that out of the water. And then here, I understand that the program requires more of a serious kind of approach to it, but I felt like the energy was just um down. And
I didn't
that
feel
when they
that.
got to the 1 foot, it was just it looked like they were wobbling all over the place, even though it's not
Okay,
intentional.
well, yeah.
It's just the way of the choreography. But it's well, I mean they are wobbling, but um it's an interesting choice, I think. And um I don't know. I just felt sloppy altogether. She does these kind of short crossovers that are not really ever fully stretched out, and she doesn't really let the glide go. So it's her feet are always very close together. It's like she doesn't really push out from the crossover. So I felt like that was even more choppy today. Um, I don't know. I again, they've had such masterpieces that this program is not horrible, but it just doesn't. It's not.
Right. It just sounds like stylistically is like not your favorite because when I think about it from like a program construction way, transitions and everything, how smooth everything is, I think it's the best program from a top team. Like I really do. Like, and I'm
Out of
putting
the
it right
top
here.
three or four, yeah.
Well, even just then, I think about how difficult the program is. It feels. I don't look at this and think to myself, "Oh, this is so empty." I'm like, "Oh, there's like." There's just like it's so open. There's no difficult holds. That they're close together the whole time. They what did I write here? I love that transition from the midline and then into the twizzles and then into the choreo step and then into the dance spin. Everything just felt so cohesive and I just loved it. I didn't feel that there was this huge separation of elements. It all felt really natural with the music. And so even if like as a whole, the program's not like not your vibe, not really mine either. It's not my favorite as like a concept in terms of as a sport in the construction. This program was just miles of difference between this and then everything else in the top three here, or even honestly the whole field. Um, and I just what sets them apart to me is still always the same things. They have those technical flaws. She's not the strongest skater, but I would say they're the more emotional ones. They have that genuine performance they're always putting into it. And I felt that. I felt that like sensitivity, sophistication. I don't know.
It's so interesting that you said that because for Chalk and Bates, I actually I watched them in the practices and I watched them in the warm up, and they always do little segments of they'll do an element. Okay. So they'll get into the element and then they always kind of acknowledge the crowd or acknowledge the judges as soon as they're done doing these elements. Someone's going to get so mad at me, but I feel like it's so put on. You see the same exact kind of emotion in their warm-ups and their practice. And then in the performance, it's all theater, right? It's really skating is theater, but it's the emotion never really changes. So I know exactly what everything it's just all the same for me.
Yeah.
So they're polished. They're super, super polished. I will say that they're so finished in everything that they do. But I don't know. Like the last minute of the program goes nowhere. They do these choreographic
Yeah.
elements that stay in the middle of the ice. They're slow to begin with. I think they looked extra slow yesterday. The twizzles they showed in replay, they do not move. They literally are kind of stationary in their second and
The
third
second set.
twizzles.
Yeah.
So it, I always harp on this, but really, how can you give these top score? The Twizzles are literally done in place. That's all I can say. Um, the choreographic elements obviously are really standouts. That first the sliding one that kind of looks like, I think it was Sally and Peltier did like an entrance to their death spiral like that where he kind of
Oh,
dragged her
really?
on the ice and then he went into the death spiral. But it reminds me of that. She just flows so well. She's not doing any skating. She's getting pulled by him, but like it's nice. I think the choreographic elements are extremely good. But then when you go again to the individual elements, it's really a case of not a huge fan, and I think that they look weak compared to a lot of the other teams.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah, good.
I did the program for me just I like the middle. I like the traditional take five. I like some of the movements they do there. The beginning and the end really it's for me. I don't the concept is what we're American. I think you said that in the rhythm dance. Like, well, what is are they going to a party in like the 20s or the 30s or like what is where is this going? I don't know. I'm not again bring back an alien, do something crazy next year because this program is as polished as they are. I think that the shortcomings of the individual elements and then the way that it's really stop and go. I'll say that. I think that's what I'm getting
Yeah,
at. I think the program
it
is very
is.
stop and go. I think towards the end, there's really not a lot of movement that goes outward and the elements, yes, they kind of ask for you to be in place, but it doesn't really flow.
Yeah, and I remember we talked about Papadakis and Cicerone's program from 2022. Um,
Oh,
and
that's
how it was it's very similar, it was like the first half is really great, right? But then the second half is just very much this. It's a very stop and start, low ice coverage. It's kind of like all these criticisms we're having now about Chalk and Bates, right? And I this program doesn't feel cohesive to me for those very same reasons. To me, it's their weakest program by far since they've moved to IAM. I don't get it. And you said you like the middle. For me, it's the middle that drags because none of it
really.
goes with the
Oh,
music. Like it's when they go to those 1 foot and the diagonal steps, and then the choreographic twizzles, like all of it just feels so generic and anything could be playing. Uh, nah. Yeah, there's just like a lot that I just don't understand that went into this, other than that, like, let's do something easy and American this year, right? And then my biggest thing though that stood out to me, not to like harp on everything, but it was the diagonal steps. I just did not get it. They were not deep curves. They were not covering a lot of ice. The pattern was just very just a line, right? Whereas you see these top teams that are really going for expansive coverage, just pretty much serpentine all along the line. They count it as a diagonal. And when I'm looking at here, they're getting okay, level three. I'm like, I don't know, but it's the +3, +4 GOE. I'm like, I don't see where +4 comes from. +3 in a really nice day, but that's a +2. And I would love to just put a side by side of them and any of Papadakis and Cicerone's diagonal step sequences. So you can just see just a huge contrast. Papadakis and Cicerone, that's the +4, +5 team that should be, for diagonal step. And there's no one ever in the history of IJS who has done diagonal steps better than Papadakis and Cicerone. That's the +5 team. I don't see where judges are finding +4 for this. I just don't.
I think that she doesn't have the push for anything to really get that ice coverage. I noticed too when you're
Yeah.
talking about they stay in the middle of the ice. Choreographic elements, yes, that kind of you kind of have to stop and go. You can make it flow a little bit better than they do, but they don't really go in the corners of the rink at all, and the ice coverage is very shallow. And I just you and I see a lot of the same thing as far as it goes with them, but I don't understand um, how the judges don't, how the technical panels don't see this. It's like they've determined that they're going to be the Olympic champions, and that's that. And actually, I was actually surprised that the score. I think it was like 1.4, 1.5 points difference between them and the Canadians here, which I thought it was going to be
Yeah,
much larger. So that's
I
at
thought so
least
too.
giving hints of maybe a battle for the Olympics. I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe, yeah, but it's gonna be one of those chalk and baits have to make a mistake. I feel like if there's a mistake, I don't think they have a single mistake lead on the field, right? I think a mistake just puts Piper or sorry, Giles and Poirier into the top spot if they're really clean, like impeccably so. But it's gonna really come down to the rhythm dance. It used to be that Chalk and Bates would never be having leads in this rhythm dance. There'd be no world where that would be the case. But now considering the choreographic step and the rhythm
Yeah.
dance, it becomes to where they run away with the competition. And so I don't know, we'll see. But things like their GOE for their last lift don't give me hope that there'll be a real battle. I don't see how that's +5. It's cool, right?
It's a little
It's
sloppy though.
it's sloppy. It takes forever to get into. You see it coming from a mile away. It's just vibing. It doesn't really go along with the music. It's just kind of like slow, whatever stayed music. The music's waiting for them to be done with the lift, is what it feels like.
I mean, I hope there's well, first and foremost, I hope that everybody comes back with
Yeah,
standout programs, but I
I
hope
want. Yeah,
there is a battle next year,
me too.
rather than just throwing out the top scores and stuff.
And I would love to see Chalk and Bates become that team again that does stuff like Billie Eilish and cool concepts instead of just what this is. But
All right,
anyway,
so finally, the men's free skate. Everyone looked
yeah.
tired. I think they should extremely tired of the
Yeah,
men's.
this was the competition that it was a shame that this ended the day because this was just tired, tired, tired all the way through.
So Maurici Kvitsilashvili from Georgia, like I said yesterday, there's no point in really going into detail about his what level he's at because he was, as far as I know, I saw that he said yesterday that he knew at Worlds that the Georgians would qualify for this event, and that's when he started really training again. So okay, it's been like 3 weeks,
Three
right?
weeks, yeah, a little
So
less than 3 weeks, yeah.
so it's like, what do you expect from it? They wanted to have a full team just so they can get points in every segment. They pull him back a bit. Good for him.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
again,
I noticed just little things like he's following the rule changes because he gave us like a little heel rise on the flying camel spin, so he can get like he did
okay,
change his
my brain was like that was probably a mistake.
no. No. So, but it does look like, I know he's still touring, but it looks like his jump technique is just completely gone. He's rushing
Yeah.
everything. I
And
think
the skating skills have really fallen away. They were not his strength before, but ooh, you could really feel that here.
and that's what happened though. He's not
Yeah.
training honestly every day. I mean, I think the loop and the Salchow to loop combination were the only jumps that really looked stable. Everything else was very rushed on the takeoff, and it was just a hope
Mhm.
that he would get around. I mean, the quad toe, the attempt that he did the second time when he tried it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't really close to.
Right. Admirable. Good effort. Like that's
And
and for real
also,
though, like if you haven't been doing quads, to just try one in competition like this, that's pretty cool. Like,
one other thing he mentioned in the interview, I hinted yesterday, oh, maybe, this is the start of him coming back to competition because there is this spot that's potentially open. He said in his interview yesterday that no, he likes show skating. This is not a comeback like this.
oh, okay.
So, I mean, it would require a lot of work on his part over the summer to get back into where he was when he left. But no, it's from for now. It seems like that's not something that's going to happen. But anyways, like I said, this he gets thrown into this less than 3 weeks ago. What do you really expect from
Right.
him? I don't think it was horrendous. It was good for him.
Yeah, yeah, for real. Yeah, yeah.
Nikolai Memla, again trying the quad flip here. I promise you at Worlds there were some really beautiful attempts, but the thing that's really interesting to me, so I don't think he got an edge call. I think he got a warning call on the flip, but historically he's always getting warning calls or edge calls on his LUTs. So it's like he's another one of these skaters like Isabel Levito, where I think the edge is just all over the place going in on both of these jumps.
Hmm.
So you might see a competition where he gets edge calls for both of them. Um,
Yeah, because I saw that like at that quad flip attempt, I immediately like, oh no, the edge. Because I would generously give unclear, but that's like a Shinamano E, clear E from live. So yeah.
uh, again, being 6'5", I feel like he has certain disadvantages that he probably won't ever be able to overcome.
Mhm.
Really choppy crossovers, really gets slow in the footwork. The second half of the program, you see how hard he's having to work to try to gain speed. Um, he got 75 PCS here. I feel like the judges really don't ever know what to do with him because
Yeah.
last year he started the year with really horrendous PCS. He was skating well technically, and then his PCS would drop him out of contention in some of the early season events. And then he gets to the bigger events, and I feel like they were finally giving him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. And then earlier this year, he has a silver medal at Europeans, and then he comes here, and I feel like this panel was kind of rough on PCS across the board. It was
They
what was
were. It was strange. It was like, which is, relieving to see. Like I liked seeing that. It was just surprising.
yeah.
But yeah, same things here. And we were talking about fatigue, and you could feel that here. It's like, he took a break after Worlds and you could see that with the quad. He just wasn't getting that snap in any of his jumps, right? That wasn't there. And then I felt like his air position was a lot looser than it normally is.
Yeah, he usually is really good about going up, and even if he checks the position really easily. But I feel like again, if you're not training 100%, that takeoff is usually the make or break moment of the jump, and for him, he has to be really, really on because he
Mm.
will lean like crazy. Um, but yeah, I don't think 75 PCS is that out of the realm of where his skating is. I think that he has a really good like feisty personality. I, like I said in the short program, I think my hope for him is that Barbara just really works with him on some of the foundational stuff. I don't know how far he can go with his fight. Unfortunately, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
But just making it less apparent that the second half of the program is so much work, making it less apparent that the spins are so much work, the steps are. Alexa Rakic, bad start for the quad toe was leaning from the start. The triple axle goes up way pre-rotated. And like I talked about in the short program, he gets off the ice and Joanne's already, before he can even, sit down. I think that's just the relationship she has with all of her skaters, and it's probably they're fine with it. But it's just for me, it's very interesting. Uh,
I know, like there's really same criticisms yesterday. But there was more personality in the second half of this skate, which I really enjoyed, seeing that come to life, especially during like the choreo sequence. I really loved that creativity, the musicality. It was kind of cute, right? Like it wasn't just kind of thrown away. But yeah, the jumps were like rougher than in the short program. It felt like here, like tired, like he
like,
just didn't get a lot of sleep. And then I was like, oh, my brain was also at that second triple axel. Why don't you just fake a half loop? Like just do a single or double sock out and see if he could get away with it.
I just don't see how where his where his potential is when that axle is how it is still. And the quad toe just really seems to go up and have a hope that it will get all the way around. I mean, he did it in the short, but it's just the technique is not reliable enough for him to ever really be serious, I think.
Yeah,
So,
he has a delayed rotation in his jumps, and it's just yeah.
all right, and then we have Roman Sadovsky, his teammate. This is very curious to me. I really need someone to explain to me why he's at 75 PCS. You see, I know they were harsh on everybody, right? And I know that this was not the beginning of the skate was so tight, but his ease of movement and his glide across the ice and the effort he puts into the presentation and the actual
Yeah.
composition of what the program offers is just so much higher than what these other skaters are that are getting stuck in the sevens. Short program, I think he was a little bit higher, like the high sevens, but still, like this is not a skater that I would see as anywhere in the sevens, even if the program's a complete disaster. He always gives it something. So
Right. 100%. Like, and I don't get it either. And I'm just looking at like his kind of like PCS cohort, and it's Grassel and Memela,
that's
like what?
yeah,
Only scoring like 3 points higher than like Igatse, and it's
right.
he should definitely be in the 80s. I don't really understand this either. It wasn't the best performance, so maybe I could see like that second PCS mark maybe being in the high sevens. But yeah, composition, skating skills, easily eights. Yeah, same.
I don't understand it. I like both of his programs this year quite a bit. I think he's pleasant to watch no matter what. The beginning of the program was not good. It was more what we've come to expect. But then
Yeah.
when he just relaxes, the jumps are done so effortlessly. And you see at the end, I think there was a string of probably three right after the 2 minute mark, but they were all, even the
Yes.
second quad Salchow, it's like, okay, like you do this so easily, just don't overthink it.
Yeah, and I wrote like they're being smarter about some stuff. So, he used to like not build programs with the idea that he's conserving energy here, he's putting it out here where he's giving it, thinking about it in phases and sections. I always felt like he was someone who just thought about it as one all the time, or just kind of like trying to figure out what would perform well. But here what I really noticed was that step sequence, he's better than the step sequence. He's holding back on purpose, to save energy. He could do it. He could do a step sequence way faster, deeper edges, give more. And that's what I was thinking during it. But then I'm like, oh, then right after he does that quad, half loop, triple, and then really great triple Lutz, really great triple loop. And it's like, wow. So he sacrificed that step sequence to then land the next three jumps, and then he can just sell the program. And probably that's like one of my only criticisms, but it's true of so many skaters today where he ends spin, spin, choreographic step, spin, right?
Yeah,
And it's just
of
the
course.
program balance isn't there. I could see that being a criticism, but it's true of almost everybody. Yeah, but otherwise, well, his PCS is far too low.
Yeah, I don't know what he needs to do. I mean, he needs to start delivering time after time again and being up at those top levels. But for me, this was just the biggest head scratcher. I don't understand where those scores are coming from. Speaking about program composition, Nika Gadze, we talked about this at Worlds, but he does the first seven elements are his seven elements. And he does it in a way that the last three are still within after 2 minutes. So in the first 2 minutes of the program, the only choreography he has, I promise you, is that thing he does at the very beginning where he's like touching a monitor or whatever right in front of the judges. And then he proceeds to go into seven jumping elements. Like I said, four of them are in the first half. Somehow he gets to the second half and he has all the rest of his elements. Like I said, I think this program is better than what he had earlier in the season. This is Oppenheimer. But it's literally 2.5 minutes of a jumping clinic. There is not one. There's little transitions here or there, but there's really no relationship to the music. Uh, but I think that he's another one that kind of like Vitalishvili, but he's coming back after all this time. But Nika kind of really jumps up into these elements out of nowhere. Like there's no preparation on
Yeah.
them. Usually it works for him. It didn't really work for him. This is probably the sloppiest I've seen him maybe ever.
Yeah, and
Again,
it's just felt like that. Tired, lack of training, took a vacation after Worlds.
yeah. Uh, he looks super. It's interesting because he does all these jumps in the beginning, then he goes into the spins and the footwork and the choreographic sequence, and he looked super winded. He looked really like he was spent afterwards. The
Yeah.
steps were only a level two; they were so clunky. Um, 72 PCS. I mean, if we're comparing him to the skater, it's a direct comparison to they skated back to back, and somehow they're almost the same level. It's mind blowing to me how the judges got this because there's really nothing in this program.
Yeah, I'm not understanding that either, especially because you're saying like back to back, like this was worlds of difference. To me, this was a 60s PCS skate or
Yeah,
50s,
yeah.
maybe even if you're being a little more accurate. Yeah, I don't harp on it, but
Henry Grassel, I feel like with him, the story is going to be if the panel is generous, he's going to finish in the top three like he did here.
yep.
If the panel really does work and reviews the elements that look short, then getting under rotations on two quads, for example, that's a massive loss of points. And he's now finishing seventh or eighth or ninth place. That's just
Right.
going to be the story of him forever. It is he needs a panel that will look the other way. And for me, in real time watching the program, I would have reviewed the quad salchow, the quad loop, the triple loop, and then the triple toe that
On the
was the
the
second
triple
combo. Yeah.
axle.
No, the other one.
Oh,
Whatever other combo he did, it was later.
oh, the Lutz
But
toe. Yeah,
yeah, so all
definitely.
four of those I would say are were short. And then they showed the Salchow in the replay, and I'm like, yeah, that was absolutely short. And
I
that
know.
it was clean. The
The
loop
loop
actually looked
too.
okay,
Oh,
but for his
see,
standards, it looked okay, but it was still short, So it's
yeah,
like
for
I
him. Yeah,
don't know.
like his best loop ever, still a carrot, still
Right.
over a quarter short. Yeah, I
I again with him, the thing is the jumps are so distracting. The Lutz and the flip, I really focused in on why they bother me so much, and it's the way he jabs that toe pick in. It's just he's a relatively smooth skater when he's going across the ice. His glide is okay. He hits some positions. Then he goes into these lutzes and these flips, and it's really just like a jarring, like twisting, and his body's all over the place. And I don't know.
And
You
when
don't
my
really see that on
brain
the edge
was,
jumps though.
yeah,
So
you don't. Sorry, say that again.
you don't see that on the edge jumps as much. The
Yeah.
axle has a little bit of a weird technique,
It's
but
the
the
landings though too. That's what I was noticing. So like I usually don't fixate on his landings. It's always like the takeoffs and then, the hunched over, part of the landing. But here what I really notice is that like his shoulders and his head position when he lands, regardless edge, toe jump, it's rounded shoulders, and then he does I guess they're calling it the texting head, where your head's really forward. That's how he lands all of his jumps.
yeah,
And I'm like, oh, I really started noticing it here, and it hasn't improved. And so that's where it's jarring, where, like you're saying, he has the choreographic sequence where he's just listening to the voiceover and doing all the movements and all the ballet, but then he just lands his jumps that way. And I'm like, well, this is the athleticism in this sport. And what you were doing was
isn't the
very
voiceover
not ballet.
is saying to point your toe though, or whatever it is, stretch or
Yeah.
whatever it says, and
Yeah, stretch, point, and he does all those things in the choreo sequence to the
yeah,
voiceover, and it's cheesy, but it works, right? I liked it. I enjoyed it. It was my favorite moment of the program, actually.
and then
Um, yeah, but then he jumps, and
yeah,
yeah, and then he jumps.
it's
And
it's
that's what you're
just
saying. This could have easily been 10, 15, depending on some of the other calls, like maybe even like 20, but 10 to 15 points lower, and then that puts him in eighth, ninth place, as opposed to
right,
three, because the
right.
competition
That's
was so bunched up, three
yeah.
to like five or six or whatever.
That's the story of his life, though. It's going to be like that for him. He's not the first skater. There have been a lot of skaters that are reliant
Hmm.
on a generous panel, and it's the way his jump technique is. Once again, he's one of the only skaters that has these really glaring issues in the men's event now. So it's hard to not fixate on that part of his skating. Anyways, with his third place in the free skate and Mamela's comeback of sorts, it looks like Italy is in a very, very strong position to win the bronze medal in
Yeah.
the event. So next we had Kevin Amos. I watched his technique very closely, and it's like I can tell immediately if he's going to land the quad toe or not. And sometimes he has this bounce on his three turn going into the jump because he goes into those jumps very slowly, very, very cautiously. And sometimes he has this extra oomph and this bounce when he's turning into it. And other times he kind of just steps into it. And when he steps into it, I
Hmm.
feel like, this is not going to work out. And sure enough, he didn't really have that extra oomph today. So I knew the first one was I thought it was going to be a bad quad attempt. He tripled it. Then the next one, this is where I'm going back to with the French pairs team. I think that second attempt really could have been called an undervert or a downgraded quad. I mean,
That's what
he
I would have
really,
done.
yeah, and then he wouldn't have run into the issues of having to change his program later on because of repeating the triple toe, and then he got a plus rep on that, so he ended up getting like 1 point for that second attempt. But uh, he came back pretty well actually. The both of the triple axles were really nice. He was smart to change his program later on. He could have actually done the missing loop that he never does. He could have put that in combination with a triple
With the
sock
triple sock out, yeah.
points. Yeah, he could have gotten some points back there, but he did well to think on the fly and change to salvage some points back. Uh, Program was not nearly, everyone's tired, so it wasn't nearly as effective as it has been earlier in the season. But the biggest thing for me is that he looks like he's having fun.
That's really, yeah.
Yeah, this is a team event, and I know he wants to make his team proud, and he's the team captain. But he looks like there's no stress, and that's a big thing. He's not wildly emotional at the end of the program, because it didn't go so well, but then he pulled it back in, so that was nice to see. Uh, Overall, though, just a little flat. I would say just a little bit flat.
Yeah, definitely. But I loved how he high-fived all those fans.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
loved like the team celebration. You could just feel like he was feeling joy in skating, and that's really what I wanted him to see. And then I love the onesies that the Kovalevs were wearing. I don't know why. But yeah, I saw that too. I noticed that he was like smart to change, right? And even then, smart to even think that like to do that just in case the panel incorrectly called his what should have been
Right.
a quad toe double carrot as a triple toe, which is what they did. And then again, I'm just seeing here in the protocol, oh, exclamation on the flip, no surprise,
Of course. Yeah. That
because
was
it's actually
definitely
an E,
cool. Yeah.
right? Please just do a
So
loop.
or just yeah, drives me crazy. It really drives me crazy.
Mm.
Uh,
But all right.
he could, you know, he can get so many points back just by switching. Such easy thing, but whatever. It looks like the French Federation is this is what they want, so it is what it is. One thing I will add about them, though, I've noticed, I think Kevin was really feeling it when Adam became the it guy for France a few years ago. I think that the
Mm.
pressure just was massive on him. And now I see like I've even seen in interviews with both of them. Now they're like, oh, we're like really super good friends now, and we root each other on, and we're you could see that I think in this
That's
competition.
awesome.
You see that they're really genuinely like they whatever rivalry they may have had or whatever was making one get in the other one's head. I don't think that exists anymore. So that was nice to see. Shun Sato, again, he did have a fever the first day. He didn't wear a mask this time, so I'm guessing maybe he feels better. But at the end of the program, I'm not so sure.
I know.
But he did do quad lutz, and it looked very easy. Every
It
time he does it,
did.
I'm like, was that a triple? I really, it's
Because
so
the
fast.
airtime, it's not like he's getting exceptional height, right? His quad Lutz has less airtime than some people's triple. So
Right.
like definitely less than Gracie Gold's triple Lutz when she had those really big triple Lutzes. So like it's yeah, it's always surprising to me too. And then you're just like,
Uh,
ooh.
this we talked about the short program really showing off his skating skills and his polish and his finish. I think this music is just such a marathon from the start. So
Mhm.
it does quite show off everything as nicely. And I again, because he was sick or still is sick, I think that he was kind of running behind or trying to play catch up almost the entire time. He lost a lot of steam at the end. But again, I'm amazed by we talk about Grosso and how he jams himself into the jumps on these toe jumps. Shun Sato is the exact opposite.
See.
Like that toe pick is like so gracefully placed. Everything is so soft.
So easy. It's so easy. And I wrote that here. Like, even though you could tell he was tired, he still makes everything look easy. He's not straining. Everything's just really light. And it's interesting what you were saying about the program because to me, like, it's nonstop, right? And so maybe like you lose some of that performance and given the fatigue and that he doesn't have fever. I don't, still crazy to me that he was able to do this. Um, to me, it was just a testament to his skating skills and how he was just able to maintain that speed. He's not taking really any breaks. There's none of that, like, I'm going to lay on the ice and pose for a little bit, but I'm
Right.
storytelling. No, he's just going. He's going. He's going. And it's almost like what we were always told during 6.0, what to look for. This is the things you want in a skater that never got rewarded. And it's even here, I I still felt like his PCS was too low. I don't know about you,
Mhm.
because it was high
Comparative to
sevens for most of it. Yeah.
he's always stuck in that like low 80s. I think even at Worlds, I was like, no, he's going to be like 81 or 82, and that's what he was. Um, I don't know what he needs to step it up to, or for the judges to step it up to the next level, because I think like the short program is really good for him, and he's still kind of sitting on that lower end of everything. But
It
um,
probably just is giving them those wow moments. Like you're saying, so much of GOE is making really
vibes.
easy that this vibes, it went with the music, and I'm really showing you, obviously, that it did. I think that the post Papadakis into their own world, we've lost all sense of like subtlety.
Mm.
In a lot of ways, everything's just really in your face now.
Yuma Kageyama, obviously my favorite.
Yeah.
I have barely any notes because what is there really to say? I think
Yeah,
that a
I
flip
was
is
struggling too to write stuff.
yeah, it's the flip is like throwing off his game. I feel like he's been inconsistent all year. He's stayed on the podium quite a few times because of the strength of the short program, which rightfully puts him way up there ahead of most skaters. And then his free skates aren't quite as good. I was interested in the fact that I think his PCS was like 83, something like that. Like
Right.
they really really went down on him.
That yeah, for that first maybe what like 20% of that program, they really hammered him for it because I felt like after that everything went really well. No, I mean, but appropriately, I would say like he had two falls, right? You're supposed to take off appropriately in presentation or performance execution, whatever we're calling that now. That should be like in the eights, right? But things like skating skills, I still would have given him nines for, maybe composition, depending on your taste level for it, but that still should have been low nines to me, high eights.
Well,
A
what is
judge here put it in the
the
sevens.
the maximum for I think the maximum 8.75.
But that makes sense here, right? It was appropriate. So one thing though, like I'm really curious to see here, he's still going for this quad flip, right? And at Worlds and here, it just was not there for him. And I know they're going for this upper technical content because otherwise they have no chance of besting Ilya. It's at this point now where Ilya has to make like two major errors for someone to really capitalize. Um, and somebody like Kageyama needs a quad flip and then one more, right, to have a chance. And he can just hope that the quality of his elements and maybe that little bit of PCS can put him over the top if he's clean. But like if he doesn't have this, I'm really curious what they do because what we're seeing here, the bigger he goes, the farther he can fall, right? And then do they do a strategy to protect that favorite to be the silver position or, safety for bronze? Or do they still try to up this technical content to fight for the gold next year? Because he's already an Olympic medalist, right? Like, so I don't know. But he needs to find that loop and that Lutz again. Because I know he had them before he had that big injury, and post injury, they're going for the flip instead of the loop or the Lutz. So I'm just curious what the strategy is.
Well, the thing is, I think in a fair world, if this PCS was marked correctly, and I think comparatively, if the quads were, and then no, actually every element he does is of such high quality. If you're talking about +4, +5, you can throw out a lot of those for him. And I think if the judges used those marks accurately, I do think if he does three quads, he has a chance to catch Elia just based on the strength of what should be a huge separation on the PCS, what should be a huge separation on GOE. Judges won't ever do that because they've determined Elia is now a 90 PCS most of the time. So there's really nowhere to go. You can't. The most they're really going to ever give Yuma is 95. I would say with an absolutely perfect skate. So then you're giving Elia 91, 92. That's 3 points. So where is it that he's going to catch up on points? I don't think. I think if he's absolutely spot on and maybe Elia has a little questionable landings or he's marked more appropriately in some of these elements, I think that maybe there's a chance. But he's starting to make these mistakes. I think he does let the performance go away a little
Yeah.
bit. Like I'm not shocked by the PCS to be honest with you. I thought maybe it would be a little bit higher, but I'm not shocked.
I thought it'd be more score typically for, a
Also,
world medalist, exactly, and not kind
I
of
noticed too. I,
accurately.
I I noticed like several times right before he skated, he was like waving at somebody in the crowd. And then when he was skating, he went to do that quad toe and he literally looked into the audience and like
I did not
spotted
see that.
something or someone. It was like, I don't know what he's doing, but it was just interesting to me. I don't know. He just seems like he's off. That flip, I think, is messing with him, and obviously, I want him to challenge Ilya. I think he is an amazing skater, and I want him to be competitive. But if the programs are going to start with a huge mistake, it's like
Right.
he's
Because if he
climbing.
just exactly, and if he just abandons the quad flip, right, and just goes for the three quads in the long, the two in the short, two triple axles in the long, he's the silver lock for sure. Like that clean, there's no one in the world aside from Ilya who can top him. And so that's the one thing too, because then he has that risk of just losing out in an Olympic medal altogether.
By starting the
That's the
program.
decision making, and I wonder when they will start making that decision, whether it's now or it's they wait in the fall season.
Yeah, give him a summer and see what he does, and then
Yeah.
we'll go. All
Ooh,
right.
ooh, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
Jason Brown. Easily should have won this free skate. And we talk about uh, doesn't have the quads. He can't compete with these people. The thing is, when everybody's sloppy and you just do what you can do. I mean, he even had a big mistake. He had a big pop, right? So he threw away what, like 5 points just there, maybe six. Um, I've said all season, I really like, I think this is one of his strongest free skates, and now I'm thinking maybe it is his best free skate that he's had.
Right.
The choreography is just next level, and I think people get so fixated on does he have a triple axel? Is it going to be tight? Oh, he's falling behind on this. He's getting older, but well, please tell me where it shows in his skating that he's aging or getting older because it doesn't. He he literally skates circles. I mean, not to be cliche,
Right.
but on the rest of the competition,
There's
is
100%.
the content is out of this world. The flow into and out of the jumps. second axle, let's be honest. Second axle looked a little bit tight. First axle to me looked fine. Other than that pop, I can't really critique really anything in the program. I think that the plus fours and the plus fives that he does pull off are completely reasonable.
Hmm.
Uh, and again, this PCS, it was good. I think what it was 92, 93, somewhere between those.
Yeah, it was 92 and a half, 92.4,
Yeah.
54.
So if
Should have been
we're
96, 97.
even so though, I mean, if we're it should have been higher, but then also other people should have been lower. So much lower. And I think that it was just very clear that the performance of the day was him.
Yep.
And we talk about people seem to take issue with the fact that he's been a skater that hasn't, he was trying quads once upon a time, and then I think he landed one time, and then he just took them out, and then people are bothered by that. But like, it's not.
Who cares?
The
This
thing,
is what I'm thinking. It's who cares? It's a sport, right? And everything's risk reward. And he's at this point in his career where the reward isn't there to risk a quad because he's landed it clean maybe one time.
yeah,
And
skating
even
there.
then it was like, right? And that's if you're generous on the call. And so I don't see the point. And even though I'm looking here, he leaves in TES just from the pop like 5 points on the table, right? And then even here, there's some improvements that can be made, like in just some of these jumps with training, if he just stays uninjured for an extended period of time. This was a 180 skate if he doesn't pop that that triple saw cow. And just think about that. No quad, a 180 skate.
And it's not all PCS. It's the thing
And
is
it's
that the
not
PCS is
all
matching it.
PCS, right? It's GOE, like just like quality. And then even then, let's say his PCS, like at an Olympics, his PCS will be higher, 100%, just because PCS at Olympics is
They
always
always go
higher for
up. Yeah.
everybody. It always goes up. So he'll be getting 96, 97 for a clean skate. He doesn't pop that saw cow. He cleans up some of these jumps. He's in the 190s
Which
with
is potentially
no
running for a medal.
quad, which is exactly
I
running
think
for a medal. He
the
can
thing is,
possibly medal if he's clean, and then some of the people on the top just don't show up when they need to.
yeah, I mean, the big thing for him and with everybody is that short program. The big skaters can really distance themselves. You're doing two
Hmm.
quads. There's not so many elements. You can really distance yourself. All the PCS is going to be stuck between 40 and 45 for most skaters. So it's like the more you can run away with these higher elements, that's what's going to potentially hurt him. But people are so
But
worried about
yeah.
him.
He can get 99, 100 with no
Yeah,
quad in the short program with a clean skate when he going back to his technical peak when he had that plus five triple flip, easy choice plus five. That could easily be in the final group at the Olympics.
yeah, for sure.
Possibly in the top three, depending on how people show up that day. So like I totally see what you mean, and I would say like I once upon a time I used to be someone who would be on the side of like, oh well, Brown has no quad, right? And now I'm totally on the side of who cares?
Exactly. You do what you can and you max it out, and he's pretty much maxed out everything that he can do. And again, if the PCS was adequately scored, it would give him the cushion that the people with the quads get with for doing quads. I mean, it's there's an imbalance there, and there's always going to be. We've talked about it how there's no real way to make them completely equal. But anyways, I still stick by he should have won the free skate here, and I'm very very happy that he had the skate that he did. Adam Siarim Fa, um, the tech the technique's always been wild, right? But this was like a different level.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
I wrote like 5 out of 7 jumping passes off axis.
right. It just really quad toe again, it was leaning way outside the circle. The quad flip was from the start leaning so far back. There was no way to salvage that one. And that was a big fall. And I think
Hmm.
right after that, everything became a little bit frantic. He has that nice little pause that hopefully gives him a reset, but it didn't work so well for him. He had a quad salco fall later in the program. Uh, I think his movement is so modern. I don't know another word to describe it, but he has this a different way of moving that we don't really see, and I like that. Like he
Yeah.
interprets the music a little bit different than everybody else. But the again, he's a world medalist, and his PCS for me is very on the low side, and I don't know if the judges are giving him the message they don't like the program or they don't like that extended break that's really just artistic. But
I mean, they were harsh on everyone with multiple mistakes and
yeah,
falls this
yeah.
event, which is again strange, right? Maybe the smaller field, it's easier for them to do that. I didn't find anything weird with the PCS relative to what they did with everybody. Yeah,
I think as a minimum, Kevin had mistakes, but I think Kevin was better on the day.
I
I think
agree.
3 or 4 points.
Mhm.
I was wondering how low they were going to go with Adam based on, if the rotations were clean or not. Um, I think I said he could be like on Sadovsky's level, but they held him up a little bit. So I don't know.
They're still giving him that cred for things like the choreographic sequence, which to me like doesn't land nearly as well when you had an error-ridden program.
Exactly. You
I
can't
don't
just
always,
tell the program by
yeah,
that.
right. And it's a bunch of fives. They're just it's an easy choice. Oh, plus 5. You brought the backflip
Backflip,
to
yay.
figure skating. Yay. Here's your reward.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I truly, really do like his skating,
Me
and
too.
um, he offers just something different.
This
And
point of view. No, this point of view in their storytelling, which so few skaters can even conceive of doing, and he just does it really well, in my opinion.
all right, let's finish this with
Technique aside.
Ilya. I'm sorry. I I know he has a massive fandom, and I'm asking to just be bashed all over the place, but there was no program here.
This
He
was
looked,
bad.
I thought he maybe like pulled like something in his groin or something because it looked like after the first jump or two, he was like grimacing almost the entire program. He was clunking along. When I say clunking, I mean there was no attempt to even keep in some of that minimal choreography he does
Yeah.
throughout the first three-fourths of the program. Uh, uh, just everything was so messy. Everything was labored. The jumps looked tight. Again, getting a little bit. The triple axel again had no flow, and I think that
Hmm.
the first one he did at least, and I think
Yeah.
that more reasonable. They give him like +1, maybe +2. Like it was more on the level that it should have been, maybe even lower, honestly.
I wrote
Um,
here +2 was too generous, right?
yeah.
And when it popped up, it looked like mostly +2s and some +1s. And I'm like, that's a 0. And looking at the protocol, there were judges giving it 3.
Yeah, it's not, it's, I don't understand it. But what I really truly don't understand is the PCS that he was given here. I mean, you can respect that he's throwing in these quads after big mistakes and he's very obviously winded and he's out of energy and he's still pulling off these jumps. But there's already a
Wasn't
very
on an
good
attempt.
program, but there was nothing here. This was phoned in. This was a struggle to get through it. Um, it, fall on the final spin. Really, he was coming out of it, and it was a
Yeah.
very
Lost
obvious.
balance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But just that was kind of the story of the whole program. Everything was just a chore, and to give 86 PCS, I feel like it's just a complete joke of this.
Yeah, that to me was 70s. I don't see how you give 80s for this.
Yeah.
And when I'm thinking about presentation, yeah, I'm giving like a 6.
There was nothing.
Presentation, composition is very similar. I'm generously giving it a 7 something. Skating skills, maybe high sevens, early eights or something, but there was nothing there. He wasn't even really giving anything either. Usually he's giving all that
Energy. Yeah.
personality once the jumps are
He
done.
was
And this
struggling.
was,
He
yeah,
was struggling. Like he wanted to be done with this. Like I said, it looked like maybe he had a little bit of like a muscle strain. I don't know, but I haven't seen him say anything, but it looked like he just was not having it after like literally the second jump. It was just everything was done in agony, get no feeling out of it. And it's again, we go back to the World's Exhibition. He's so capable of elevating the performance to a different level and including this choreography. But when it comes to all these quads in the competition, there's really not much to go off of, especially in the
yeah.
free. I think short program he can mask that, but here, I'm sorry, like this PCS should have been below Sadovsky, 100%. Um,
Yep.
give him scores similar to Agadze because let's be real, this was kind of the same approach to what Agadze did in his program, and I don't know. Still ended up winning the segment. Again, I think that
Which in Brown should
Brown should.
easily have been first. I could see Ilya second, just considering just the technical content, even with all the mistakes. But yeah, the PCS was just way too high. Should have been, in my opinion, 10 points lower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're giving Sadovsky 75 or whatever it is you got, I mean, make it make sense. I don't know. These judges are trained. Actually, well, we're going back to the Italian judge. Maybe not trained as well as we assume they should be, but how you could explain. I even looked. I looked at the protocol really briefly after the skate because I wanted to see if he did indeed get the fall on the spin, and I noticed there were some nines. I think even maybe some 9.25s in his PCS, which
Yeah.
I don't. This is like
Composition, Swedish judge, 9. Skating skills, 9.
I don't know. So in the end, the U.S. has a huge lead. They will win this competition.
Yeah.
Japan will win the silver medal, and the battle really is for the bronze. Italy has a comfortable lead right now. What would have to happen is the two French women would have to pretty much have the skates of their lives finish like fourth, fifth place, and then you have to pretty much hope for the worst for the two Italian women because Italy already has that cushion in the pairs event, regardless of what happens. So it looks like Italy will win the bronze medal. Georgia's interestingly kind of keeping up, considering that they've had three last place finishes in their segment. Like they're not. It's not like a wipeout of any sorts. So
Yeah,
that's
decent, way better than I thought the
yeah,
showing would be. Still last place, but I thought it'd be a little, farther
exactly like
down.
it was a blowout, you know. Um,
Hmm.
But the basic summary of today is it was really interesting how on the first day everyone was full of all this energy and really excited to go. And I feel like consistently across the board today. And just ending with Elia was the perfect summary of how the day was. Everyone was just
Hmm.
tired. Everyone just maybe jet lag. Maybe they've been, not really in peak shape anymore. But it was across the board
Right.
almost. I don't think any skater showed up here like, wow, they're really ready for this. So
And if I was thinking about how I'd be, like next year's the Olympic year. You just had a really
you're
long season. You just came back from Worlds 3 weeks ago, less than 3 weeks ago. I know just took a break. That first day you have that excitement. It's like seeing your friends again. You're in Japan. But now it's day 2. I'm feeling the jet lag, right? That adrenaline's gone. I'm looking forward. I'm looking ahead. I can't wait to be done with this, start planning or going on a longer vacation or just having fun here after this competition is over and I can just go and explore Japan for a bit or in
yeah.
Tokyo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So today we have the final day, the women's free skate and then the pairs free
Yeah.
skate, kind of anticlimactic to end on the pairs because there's not really a lot of points up for grabs there.
Right,
I
right.
feel like they do this in the Olympics too. They always the last day it's like, okay, well, it's already such an obvious result. Like, well,
Yeah,
what's
it's we should talk about that when we talk about the team event. I definitely want to talk about the way it's scored. I really hate the way that they set up the scoring to where the short program is everything, and
Yep.
then the long and the final is almost nothing. It's
Yeah.
so meaningless.
Right.
Yeah.
And so here, yeah, we're ending with pairs. It's a difference of 5 points to first to last place. It's not going to see a lot of movement, so we'll probably know who the medalists are. We'll probably know the final results by the time that comes around.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I hope that the skating is a little bit more elevated. Again, it's a cheese fest, and we can't take it. We can't be too hypercritical of.
Especially since we have so few these days, as
Yeah,
opposed to
it's
7 a year.
yeah, exactly. This is USFSA giving us every possible combination of pro
Which I
am.
used to take so seriously as such like a young fan.
Me too. Oh, I thought everything was on the level of Worlds. I was like, oh, this Skate Canada that has been everyone's fallen 5 times. Like this is very serious competition, you know? No, but oh, and then some of the pro events that just had rules that were out the window. Like they had the celebrity judges that would just tie the teams, and we saw a lot of everything. But I feel like this competition is more along those lines, and we shouldn't take it quite as seriously. But
Yeah.
in the end, we still have judges that are held to a standard that is presented by this rule book, and it's thrown out the window sometimes, and it's really disappointing that it happens. But that is the sport.
The PCS though and men's and stuff like that made me a little hopeful because the performance ended up mattering in a way, how well they skated ended up mattering in a way, and I hope that starts mattering more as
I
opposed to
don't think it will, and I'll
less.
tell you why. Because, like you said, this field is small, and it's
Yeah, it's
really
easier.
easy to differentiate what happened in the first group compared to the second group, and then say, okay, I'm going accordingly. When you have 24 skaters in an event, when you have a short program with 35, 40 skaters, I, even as a hardcore fan, someone cannot sit
It's
there the
hard.
whole day and be like, oh, I accurately this, and you're not supposed to compare skater to skater, right? You're comparing them to a system. But then you get in your head and you're like,
It's
well, if I was
natural.
giving a 6 to this group, then I have to give a 7 here. I feel like here there was a more easy way to jump around to wherever they really wanted to be. But again, it didn't, some of them it didn't make any sense as it is. So it's going to be something we never get over, and I'll always have something to complain about on
Yeah,
that.
and I think that's true. You know, you're talking about that because and we talked something about that too, how you'll be at some competitions, especially some of these junior Grand Prix. I don't know how people do it at a junior Grand Prix where you're sitting through like 40 to 50 skaters, right? When you just think about natural like decision making, right? These studies that decision making, every decision you make degrades the quality of your decisions after that. Judges, by the end of a long competition, they're not judging as well and as
Oh,
accurately as they did at the
there's no way.
beginning. But the
There's no
stakes
way.
are higher at the end than at the beginning. And so I don't know if that's even something that could even be solved or something that we as a fandom just have to accept.
We have to accept it, and it's natural. You get very excited at the beginning of this or that or whatever, and then you interest. It's just it's what happens, and again, we go back to what this ice dance technical controller told us. If you think about being a judge and you're giving 0, 0, 0, 1, and then the night's going on, and okay, this looks good, maybe a +2. No, now it's the next group of, oh, this was really good, maybe a +3. I have to start giving like a
And you're
different.
forming the standard as you go in the competition. Exactly. And it's like and I think it's naturally human. We we don't think about things in a I guess they would call it like objective criterion things. We don't objectively evaluate things on a criteria. We're always making comparisons. We know how to rank things in our brain based on a criterion and a set of values that we can't always verbalize or even truly understand sometimes. And so I'm trying to accept it more that this is such a subjective sport in that regard. But you know, my nerd brain always wants to go back to the rules and my
Yeah,
own
like
individual
follow the rules for
interpretation
every
of it.
skater. I don't care. Like go line by line, and you explain to me how you got this.
Yeah,
I would love
I would love that too.
to hear. I would love for the ISU to post maybe a roundtable, which will never happen because then you'll have crazy fans that go after certain judges or whatever. But I would love to hear how they get these PCS for Elia. I would love to hear. This is the criteria. This is what I gave for this aspect. I think he was really strong in this. I think he was, a 9
And
is a high level,
right.
right?
And
So
we've seen what happens though too when you have judges that are outspoken, even if they're being honorable, they're giving really rules-based explanations. And I think of Joe Inman, right? Was he really ever really wrong about any of the things he said about skaters when he did talk about IJS? And you know, I before he passed, it was like years ago, back when IGS was first a thing, I had conversations with him. And, you know, I did that like no one's ever done. Like, we've never seen a competition. I'm just going to judge a competition based on these rules. You know, that sparked a conversation between us. And, you know, he was just such a nerd and he could, you know, just explain things so clearly. And he's such a strong, clear point of view. But I can totally see why someone like that today would not say anything. Because even back then, before the advent of like I guess how bad social media can be and you know the brigading that can happen and you know that definitely happens in our sport. It was happening to him. He was getting attacked all the time. I'm sure he got threats from all over the world just, you know, by daring to offer an opinion, even if it was a strong one. So I don't know. I'd love to see that as a nerd. I'd love to see that. But I think to myself, even as a fan today versus who I was 15, 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, I'm on the board with like attacking people's opinions, right? Even if they're a judge, I'm like, I disagree with you strongly. You deserve to hear it from me. But today, I think I would love that. I would love to just even engage in a dialogue more with officials just publicly. So to increase that understanding of the sport, because that's really what's missing. And when I have friends I talk to the sport about, they have no idea what's going on. They just love to watch things and they love to vibe. The number is just some random number. They don't even have context for it. Yeah.
for most people, I mean, even longtime fans that attend all these events, they don't reading is maybe not their preferred way of learning, and that's how you
Oh,
really
okay.
learn the system. Uh, so they're kind of left in the dark, and they have their opinions formed on the music or the vibe of the program, and there's so much more to that. And I've seen comments about being able to do quads must mean like skating skills are very strong, and it's just there's a very big disconnect on what the components are of literally the components of everything in skating, not just PCS. But
And you know, it's true of some judges too. I've talked to a judge once when I was like, "Who do you like?" and you know, "Who you not?" and everything he was describing was just vibes. So I'm
yeah,
like, "Oh, interesting," you know. And officials do that too. I just think it's human nature.
right.
Anyway,
It's never going to be fixed. It's just it's when it's so glaring, like you're chugging through a program and then there's no effort to do anything, and you're being handed, a high eights, a nine. It's you got to bring it up.
Yeah.
I would have been never assigned to anything ever again because I really would have gone to town on that. And he's not the only one. There's several skaters that really didn't give anything, and end of the year or not, I just wait for that day where everything's consistent and makes sense, but it's not going to happen. And
Yeah, so like,
they're watching.
and we're probably never gonna change that. But overall, even if today's it wasn't that great skating wise and there was a lot of fatigue, my biggest takeaway was that Brown is a dark horse for an Olympic medal. It's
He,
gonna require some help
it's
from
gonna
other
require
skaters, but
help in
he's
the
there to
short.
capitalize.
Jason with his limit short,
99-ish, yeah.
yeah, he's going to be at a little deficit, and then as long as the skaters are pretty much rotating their quads, step outs, minor
Yeah.
mistakes, they're still making. The thing that's really you need pops or you
Hmm.
need massive mistakes, and that's true though, and I've had this conversation. That's not just true of someone like Jason without a quad toe. This is also true of Kevin Amos. He's always like knocking on the door of somebody that could potentially be on the podium, but it really depends on what everybody else is doing as opposed to him just delivering a clean skate. Now, Skate America was almost perfection for him, and you see he's in the 190s there. But it's the other skaters can just really run away with it, and it's for someone that doesn't have three, four, five quads or whatever, it's really just coming down to what those skaters do as opposed to what how they can max themselves out. But Jason, of course, you have a sloppy event like this one, and Jason's going to find himself on the podium. It's just
Yeah, and like I think about his max score, considering short program long, and obviously the long program score would partially depend on whether he's final group or not, just for that maybe 2 points extra, 1 point extra in PCS. But like he's maybe maxing out at 285, 290, right? Perfect, clean at his peak.
yeah.
I'm looking at here, this last year Worlds, 290 gets him the silver,
Mhm.
280 gets him the bronze. And so like even with the Shidorov who just skated lights out in the long, Shidorov got 193, maybe by Olympics that same skate is like 197, something like that.
Oh, his
But
PCS will get way up now.
yeah, it'll go up. But Brown has a shot. Like you're gonna need a kind of relatively randomly ish skated, some poorly skated competition like 2025 Worlds, just like you're saying, but it's way more realistic than I thought before this competition. Yeah.
My takeaway, Jason was the one saving grace of I think the entire
Yeah.
day. I love this program. I'm so happy he got it together. I'm happy that he's really at 30 years old making, I don't care that he's had the same jump content for 10 years or however long it's been. It's he elevates the performance, and it's figure skating, and you need to see something in that second mark. And for me, again, like no question, highest PCS and best spins, among the best footwork, if not the best footwork. Um, just really exciting to see. So happy for him, very happy for him.
Yeah, same. I'm just glad he's still here. I hope he stays healthy all next season. And he can just blow us all away. Continue to do it.
All right, so that wraps up day two. Again, tomorrow or later tonight, actually, I should say, we have the
Yeah.
women's free skate and the pairs free skate. I will watch it live again.
I'll probably do the same. I'll wake
Very
up, I'll watch
anticlimactic.
the second one live, go back and watch the first one. Yeah.
So we'll continue our thoughts tomorrow. As always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Please tell your friends. Um, we just love talking about skating. We love talking about all the things that are wrong. I love throwing my references from being a bratty little 20 something, always contacting the ISU, trying to get people in trouble or clarify things. So whenever that happens, that's a nice opportunity for me. But anyways, again, thank you for watching. My name is Tony Wheeler.
I'm Thomas Boo.
Have a good day.
Okay, bye everybody.